right. Thanks everyone for joining us for Feature Friday. If I haven't had the pleasure to meet you yet, I'm Holly Conrad Smith. I am the Customer Success Manager here at Giraffe. And also today we have James Blackwood joining us as well. James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. James Blackwood. I'm in Orlando, Florida. One of the team here at Giraffe.
Awesome. And today we are going to focus on the Giraffe apartment algorithm. We released the flow builder and generative design elements back in January of this year, and we've seen an explosion of use, especially in the US, where most of you are located. So we're really excited to take this opportunity to really dive into all of the settings in the apartment algorithm. James, would you mind, while I'm demoing, just watching the waiting room and admitting anyone who joins us a little late?
Yep, 100%. And if you have questions, guys, chuck them in the chat. And after Holly's gone through the bit of organized content here, I'm going to go free form at the end and can answer questions at the end. So, but please ask questions because I know you'll have them.
Awesome. Thanks for that, James. Okay, let's dive in here. So the first thing to understand about Giraffe's philosophy on algorithms is that we don't want to tell you as the developer or design expert what you can build. We want you to be able to use your skills and your knowledge and your expertise to tell Giraffe what is possible. However, we want to support you in doing that. So what we've done when designing the apartment algorithm is making it really quick and easy to lay down an apartment building quickly. But then you can go in there and adjust if needed. If the initial solve is great, then that's awesome. We've saved you a bunch of time. And then we make it easy for you to adjust the apartment building as needed to meet your requirements. So I'm going to start by just adding an apartment building to our site here. And I will do that by jumping into our drawing toolbar here at the bottom. And we have some pre-saved algorithms here in this lightning bolt. It says flow features. And when I click that lightning bolt, I'm going to get a menu of options. These are all kinds of pre-built generative design algorithms that we've included in Giraffe for you. So definitely take a moment to dive into these and check them out on your own time. But today, of course, we're focusing on this apartments algorithm. So I'm just going to click that. And the way the apartment algorithm works is you are drawing a center line down the center of your hallway. So rather than thinking of it as drawing a rectangle or a polygon that represents the outer limits of your building, you're going to draw a center line of your building. So I will just start by clicking here on the map. I know I want this building to be about 150 feet long. And then maybe I'll add another 150-foot branch over here. I did that by just typing that number in on my keyboard, so it snaps to an exact amount. And you can see that Giraffe has immediately generated a building here around that center line. It includes a mix of units, a corridor, and even some core space. So that core space would be defined as your stair towers or your elevators or mechanical, anything that you need to include in addition to the units and corridors. What you will probably want to do after you generate this is adjust to meet your unit mix requirements. So I want to go over how that works in the apartment algorithm real quickly first. You'll notice as soon as I drew this that you have some data that starts rendering in the urban tab. And that data includes your areas for all of the different types of geometry that was drawn, as well as a unit count. So we can see down here that we're estimating about 115 units for this building. And that's based on settings that were in that default apartment algorithm. And I'll show you how to edit those in a moment. But what I want to look at first is you'll see here that we have areas for each different unit type. If you're familiar with Giraffe at all, you've probably used our residential usage here under the buildings. And if I just throw down a rectangle here using that residential usage, I will also get a readout of gross floor area and also a unit count based on that geometry. The difference here with our classic, what we call block and stack style, is it's not really what you see is what you get. What you've got here is just a rectangle that is, colored yellow. And we're doing some math in the background to determine how many units would fit into that rectangle. That math is contained within the residential usage. So I've just opened up our usage tab here. And in this usage, I can define some information about those units. So the size of the unit, what the unit mix is like, and all of this basically drives the Giraffe engine to do some fancy calculations in the background and give you an estimate of how many units would fit in this building. Now, taking that to the next level is the apartment algorithm, which takes that concept of a usage and turns it into much more what you see is what you get. So we've got here, we can visually see all of the different unit types, our cores and corridors, where, the unit layout is. So that count becomes very apparent of what's going on here. And the way we did that is rather than just doing math based on a volume, is we've actually modeled each of these individual units for you. And each of those individual units are also a usage. So if I go into my usage editor again and pull up, for instance, my 1-bedroom unit, you can see here some similar settings to what we saw in the apartments usage. So you can see some things like what is the price of that unit, the number of cars or the number of people. You can see its efficiency is at 100% because we're not considering, we're not taking out for the cores and corridors from these units because we've drawn the cores and corridors. And we've got color, cost data, same things that you would see in the residential usage. The main difference is that things like the unit mix and the unit sizes are controlled in the algorithm as opposed to the usage. So if I click on that apartment building that I generated, I can see here all of my generated features. So this tells me that this algorithm generated studio units, 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, a corridor, and a core. And I can click into those to edit their settings. So if I click into the studio unit, I'll get this drop down of settings. The first one that shows up is the output, which is the actual geometry that's drawn on the map. So it has that studio unit usage applied to it. But what I want to do is edit the apartment algorithm settings. So I'm going to jump into that top section here. And this is where the meat really gets going in this algorithm. So like I was mentioning before with those unit sizes, that is in this section here. And this looks very similar again to what you were looking at in that residential usage. But here it's controlling the actual geometric outputs of that algorithm. So I can go through here and adjust my unit sizes. I'm going to adjust them to be a little bit more what I would typically expect apartment sizes to be in my area, which is Philadelphia. But you can make these whatever size makes sense for your project. And you can see as I adjust these sizes, my algorithm is resolving to meet those requirements. I can also adjust my unit mix here. So maybe I want fewer 1-beds. fewer two beds. And maybe this is a, an area with lots of students or singles. So I'm going to do a lot of studios in this building. So you can see as I adjusted those sliders and the sizes of the units, my apartments regenerated in the building. So it's very fast. And it's nice because you can see what the math is in the background as you go. Mustafa, I see your hand raised. We're going to save questions for after this part of the presentation, but please put your question in the chat so we don't forget to answer it.
Holly, I'm chatting with Mustafa. We're good.
Cool, awesome. I'm glad to see that. I just didn't want him to sit there with his question unanswered if we weren't getting to it. Here, so I've just showed you how to adjust the unit mix and unit sizes. But also important is the actual building parameters. So in the top portion here, I can adjust those sizes as well. So some of these are very obvious what it means. So corridor width, we all know that's adjusting the width of the corridor. And then left and right depth, if I jump into top view here, will be easier to see. So this allows you to have an apartment building that has an uneven offset from either side of the corridor. So maybe the corridor isn't exactly centered. So you can give it a different depth on either side. So maybe I want one side to be 25 feet and one side to be 30 feet. And as I've adjusted that, you can see now the inner side here is has some deeper units than this outer side. The same thing with start and end depth. So you can see here that these units wrap around the end of the corridor. And that is what the start and end depth is. So I could make this 0 if I wanted my apartment building to not have any, wrapping corner units, if I wanted the corridor to go all the way to the end. Or if I only wanted that on one side, I could adjust so that my units wrap on this end, but on this end it stays open. It's all very customizable and easy to type in exactly what you're looking for. The other thing that you might want to edit is the number of levels, of course. So I am going to click again on this building. And it pulls up that very classic, if you're used to Giraffe, working in the properties palette. So inside of each of these generated features, you can also see a properties section here. But these properties only affect the feature that you see here. So this is affecting only the features that have that studio unit usage applied. If I go back, these properties are affecting the entire algorithm. So I can see here that this building has been assigned 5 levels. Maybe I want it to be 6 or 7, so I can just add more levels there. If I were to adjust the number of levels on each of these features individually, it would only affect, for instance, the studio units. So you might end up with extra or not enough if you were editing those levels within the generated feature. So just look for that levels in the building level properties. So that is, letting the algorithm do 90% of the work for you. You're, inputting just building dimensions, drawing the line, and then it solves based on the sizes and mix that you've input. If you are looking at this and you're thinking, I want to adjust this more so that I can really home in on what this building layout is going to look at, you can take it to the next level. So there's 2 ways to do that. I can either, within the apartment settings here, click on edit mode. And it brings you into this nice editing view of the details there. Or with this selected, I can just use the hotkeys Shift plus A. And that also brings you into this edit mode. And then in this edit mode, I can do things like pull one edge of this building to be, a different size. I can pull out my ends to add those end caps or pull them in. Or I can change the size of individual units. So maybe, this one corner unit looks quite long. So maybe I want to adjust that down, and I can just pull those edges in and adjust that unit size. The same thing with this corner unit. You can also move the location of units by just grabbing one and dragging it. So maybe I want this larger unit to be on the end. Maybe I want these two smaller units to be next to each other. And then you can also adjust the location of your cores. So here, I'm looking at this core, and maybe I want it to be a little bit more space here, so I can drag those out and add some space. Or what I can also do is add an additional area. So here, with these two units, if I hold down Alt and then drag, it's going to add another line here. And what that's done is it allowed me to add another corridor space here, and then I can maybe even out these units. As I'm dragging these dots around, you're noticing that the colors are changing of these different units. That's because Giraffe is being smart about the unit sizes that you input into the algorithm. So even though you're changing the size of a, one bedroom unit and making it a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, it's not staying as a one bedroom unit if it meets the size threshold for a different unit type. So you don't have to worry about going in there and then manually changing what unit type it is based on the size of the unit that you've created. The algorithm is still doing a lot of work in the background to solve those things for you. So it's really helpful with getting everything put together and really meeting those requirements for your project. I'm just going to add another unit here just to get something that I like this look. Now, when I click off of this, I've noticed that I have a lot of cores. So I'm going to do some editing here. What happens with this core creation is it is any shape that I've created by doing those customized dragging that is too small to be a unit. So what I want to do is make some of these a little bit larger so that I don't have so many cores and it makes more sense. So I'm just going to edit in here. Just make that look nice. Perfect. And now when I go into 3D view, I can see all of those units stacked up nicely together, and I can visually see where my cores and my corridor are. The last thing that I want to show you with this building is how to add a podium, because oftentimes our residential buildings will have a different usage on the first floor. So the first way you can do it is really simple. I can just draw a polygon on the ground level here. I'm going to just click P on my keyboard to start that polygon tool, and then hold down S to snap to the corners here. And I'm just going to trace around this building so that it matches that size exactly. And then give it a usage like maybe I want a retail podium on the bottom there. And when I go to 3D, now I can see that this building is stacked on top of that retail podium. Another way to do this is by having it be part of the algorithm. So I am going to jump into my, there we go, into my flow builder here, open flow builder. And you get this view of what the algorithm is actually doing and thinking in the background. So if you remember, we drew a line at the beginning, And then the giraffe apartment algorithm gets applied to that line. And all of the outputs are all the different usage geometry that can be applied as part of that algorithm. Now, what I want to do is add another section to this algorithm. So I'm going to come down here to the original feature, and I'm just going to split this algorithm. I'm going to add another line here, and I'm just going to offset that line to be the width of my building, which I think I made it
35.
I made it, well, it was 25 on one side, and yeah. Thanks, James. We'll see. If it's slightly too big, I can always adjust it. But then I can make this retail as well. Adjust the number of levels here to 1. And then when I save that, yeah, the podium sticks out a little bit, but that's fine. I now have this podium that is connected to the algorithm. So as I edit the building, the podium also edits with it. So that can be really useful if you are still arranging your site, but want to make sure that you're counting those areas for the podium as well. And with that, those are all of the settings and background and information on how to really narrow in on your apartment algorithm settings. And the next thing we want to do is open this up for James to tell us a little bit about how to take this building to the next level and really customize it, and also give you an opportunity to ask any questions and maybe try to stump James and see if you can come up with an edge case that he needs to do a little work to solve. So please continue to put those questions in the chat, and I will pose them to James as he goes. Take it away, James.
Thanks, Holly. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm not going to touch Holly's beautiful wrap thing other than, this podium thing. What I am going to do is just play with it because it's really fun. But I will create a new one. And part of what I want to do with my piece here is basically hack the components that Holly shared with you to do fringe stuff, edge case stuff. Because one of the things with algorithms is you don't want them to get in your way. You want them to be a resource, not an inhibitor. And one of the things we found with algorithms is if they're useful to a point, but every building is different. Every building code is different as far as we know across the globe. And so you need the ability to get in there and make it your own, make it bespoke. And that's core to how we built this. Like the core placement, for instance, is random. It's not totally random, but it's relatively random. It places it in corners, but the size of that core is not like appropriate for the size of building, or it may not have any egress and ingress, or a fire escape stairs, or whatever it might be. So you need the ability to jump in there and apply the learnings that you know for your region and for your building code. And that's part of what we'll look at. So this section I'm calling hacking the apartment algorithm. Before I go completely into hacking the apartment algorithm, I'm just going to show you one little thing that I really like about apartments. And that is the way that it self-heals. So it does all the things that Holly showed you, but if I have the choice around what I do there, I could either manually draw in my core, or I might want to draw in a weird shaped unit. So let's do that. Let's remove this guy. I want him to come back here, and we'll make him like a 700 square foot dwelling, something like 750. And this guy I'll bring back a little bit too. In fact, maybe we'll go all the way back on this one. And in its corner here, I'm going to draw a usage that's not connected to the algorithm. I'll go up 12 feet. I'm just typing 12 on my keyboard, and then out 12 feet. And I'm snapping to the corner here and then using the set lengths on my keyboard to keep it exactly 12 by 12. And now I still have these voids. I can go draw in some more interesting shaped units. So I'm going to grab my 2-bedroom unit, snap again to the corners, snap to here. And this is where I could do something like this, where I have, a non-traditional apartment shape. And then on the other side, I might do a 2 better as well. And again, you guys are way more empowered than me to make good decisions here about units. You may be looking at this and just absolutely dying at my configuration here. And that's okay. But the point being, I can draw something manual in the void of what the algorithm, where the algorithm falls down. So here, I'll just crank these up. Boom. Now I've got this beautiful sort of complex corner that allows me to explain exactly what we're going to do. And then when I look at the area here, 831 and 669, like those are great unit sizes. 669 is probably closer to a 1 better, so let's change it down to a 1 better. And that's going to adjust my count in the right way. And then same here, if we want to draw a skinnier fire escape or whatever it might be, we could definitely do that. So then the two other questions I get on algorithmic manipulation is, okay, that's cool, James, but I want to do something like an external hallway. How do I do an external hallway? So if I go back to drawing another algorithm, I can simply get rid of my double loading. So you see how I just got rid of the double loading. And if you hit Shift A when you've got this selected, you can, instead of getting rid of one side the whole way around, I can actually just choose which side I want to get rid of. So I've just gotten rid of this loading here just to show you both. And then I'm going to be super sneaky and I'm going to pop into the usage editor and I'm going to bring up that corridor usage. So you'll notice a few things about corridor. One is its cell efficiency is 0%, and that's good for our math because we want it to be 0 when it comes through to our total efficiencies or our total measurement of saleable areas. But I can add properties in here, or I could change properties in here to control the output of the corridor. So for instance, if we wanted it to be sort of a nice blue color with a white outline, just to do something totally aesthetic, I could change the corridors like that. But in this case, I want to get rid of the facades because I want to do an exposed hallway. So we can say no facades, and that's a property in Giraffe that it understands. And when I hit that, you'll notice here that now we have this beautiful open hallway that's looking out over our courtyard. Very classic for commodity condos or apartments to have an external hallway like that. So pretty cool. That little, just to recap that guy, we just went to corridor and we changed that to have no facades. I added this property called no facades. So there's a bunch of different ways you can use that. Same if you have a ventilated, if it's self-ventilated where you don't have any AC in the middle of your apartments, we do the same thing where we'd say, and this is very popular in Florida, I want to draw an apartment that's just a straight eye, no end caps because I need the corridor space to be self-ventilated. And you can see I've got that kind of setup going on where the wind is going to blow throughout. We don't need to have AC there in the middle. Mind you, you would want some fans. Okay, so those are corridors. Core locations, I do get asked about this a little bit, particularly when we're doing towers. If we want to draw a tower and say I want to have an external core, how do I do that? And it works the same as I showed you previously. So I would draw my apartments and I'd crank it up to be tower size, but you'll notice that this thing is completely unsupported with any kind of core at the moment. And so I'd have to come in and say, okay, Shift A, I'll make my core sort of here. And I'm going to do 2 dwellings that are smaller than my studio. And so that tells the algorithm to turn those 2 spaces into core. And if it's not big enough for the size, then I can just draw externally, if you want to do external core, an additional core space to come and give us, exactly what we need from a structure point of view. So I get that one a fair bit too. Whilst we're here, let's do some corridors, some balconies on this tower. So what I might do now is actually physically draw a balcony in the top view. So I'm going to say these large apartments have this kind of like elliptical balcony. I'm just going to manually draw these, copy paste them, and like this. You could use an algorithm to do this, but I'm just manually drawing them right now. And when we now look at this shape, we've got these sort of balconies that stick out here. So now I'm going to assign these a usage, and that usage is going to be called a balcony. So I'm going to take the corridor, because it's most similar to the corridor, and hit clone, and we'll add balcony here. And that balcony, depending on your planning authority, you may have to consider it as part of FAR, or you may not have to consider it part of FAR. Either way, it's not rentable floor space. So our efficiency, we can leave it 100 if you have to consider it for FAR. And if you obviously you can't rent it, so we'll leave this at 0. Floor to floor, we want to be the same as the whole system. We do want to have no facades. And then let's get it back to that sort of yellowy color so it looks like part of our building. And I'll hit save changes here. And then let's assign that to these polygons, say balcony. And then we can crank that up to be the size of a whole apartment. See, I've just stuck this out slightly. Okay, so there's our, now we've got our cool facade going on there. And obviously we could spend the time to do ones for the smaller apartments as well, or however you're planning on monetizing that. Some people like to have no facades the whole way around. If you want to do no facades on the whole tower, you can just add it as a property to the algorithm. And then you've got this sort of like plan view of the tower, which I think looks great. The core is nice and solid. Okay. Balconies, open areas, floor plans on different levels. I'll hit that one up in a second. Another question I get asked a lot is, how do I do a rooftop area? And by the way, when I finish doing sort of design tasks here, I'm going to show you how to do math. And I'm going to try and do that in 5 minutes and end the session a little bit early, so the recording is stimulating. And we have, just like we have this property called no facades, and I'm going to take this off corridor so we can get our corridors back. We have another property that Giraffe understands called force stack. So when I draw a landscape out of the box, I'll say landscape. I just draw it on the ground and then drag it onto my building. By default, Giraffe knows that this is a landscape, and so it needs to be placed on the ground. However, if we want it to stack, we can force it to stack. And you'll notice this little toggle over here. I can hit force stack. Now when I drag it on the building, it stacks on top of the building, which is a neat way to create sort of a rooftop space. You can also add it programmatically to the building. So for instance, if you wanted to have rooftop gardens on all of the 3-bedroom apartments, I could open the flow builder, grab my 3-bedroom apartment output. It's already got one output, which is coming to this 3-bedroom unit usage. Let's add an output and let's offset it slightly back. So we'll do offset by 3 feet so that it's not taking up the whole roof. And then let's turn that output into a landscape. And again, we'll have to remember to hit force stack, otherwise it'll put it on the ground. So now I've got landscapes on the top of my 3-bedroom apartments. Why you would do that, I'm not really sure, but it looks really cool. Maybe that's solar panels. And if you're doing industrial, if you're coming to the industrial webinar next week, part of what we'll show is how to put solar panels on roofs of industrial buildings using that same kind of logic. Okay, I think that is everything I wanted to show. Let's have a quick look now at math. So as Holly rightly pointed out, when you do a residential usage type, Giraffe is handling it this way in a conceptual basis. It's saying to you, tell me how efficient this building is. So when we go look at residential usage, I can manually control the efficiency. So I need to have some level of smarts around the kind of building here. Giraffe's not telling me how efficient it is. I need to determine how efficient it is, and then the math spits out our yield. With the algorithm, though, efficiency is solved for. Based on what we've done here, the building is so efficient. And so we probably should build a calculation that tells us how efficient it is. Let's isolate just the tower. I'll get rid of all this other stuff because it's, there's a lot there. And let's get rid of the snake. And let's just focus on our tower and our balconies here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move into analytics. Analytics is a piece of Giraffe that allows us to customize the way things are calculated. So you'll remember a few things about what we've shown so far. One bedroom units have 100% efficiency for both FAR calculations and net rentable calculations. Corridors core have 0, 0 for core. Corridor has 100, 0, because most FAR makes you consider corridor as well, although it might be 0 for you. And then our balcony is again 100, 0, because balconies can often contribute to FAR. So let's go build that out. I'm going to create a new calculation, and we'll call this built form analysis. And this part of Giraffe is very similar to Excel. We're just defining the way we want to calculate certain things. So I'm going to add a calculation, and this first one will be our gross areas for the residential typologies. And I want to focus this calculation on 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, core, corridor, and balcony, wherever balcony's gone. Okay. And the property within the model that I want to measure is the gross area. So we'll just say A. And what is happening here in the calculation is we're saying take the gross area property from every feature and sum it together and give us the output in square feet. So it's saying there's 16 features out there that match the criteria we've got here, and that's going to sum to give us 350,000 square feet. So let's duplicate this calculation, and we'll call this now GFA, or gross floor area, which is the let's call it net floor area. So this is what the calculation that would constitute FAR. So I'll go to our deal here, and I'll say, instead of giving me the gross, give me the net area. And it's maintaining those same usages, but sum the net areas this time, slightly less. And then the next one we'll do is duplicate this one, and we'll call this net saleable or net rentable, and change it to saleable area. And those saleable area and gross floor area or net floor area, those are the expressions that relate to the efficiencies that we're tracking at the usage level. So now you can see I've got my 3 different metrics here. And if we want to look at what the efficiency of this building is from a rentability standpoint, now we just add a new calculation, say, go get me the net rentable area, go get me the gross area, and just put A over B multiplied by 100. And that's going to tell us how efficient this building is. 75%, which makes sense for a tower. So pretty cool. And we can build these all out. Once they're done, they're templatable, and we can use them many, many times over. We don't have to go through this logic every single time. The point is here, the way that you do your calculations can be hard-coded into Giraffe. And every developer that I've spoken to across the world has nuance on the way that they calculate these things. So we've built a tool that's flexible enough for you to push and pull around as appropriate. Holly, any questions on the chat that we need to address more than the ones I already have?
I don't see any questions in the chat, so unless they were messaging you directly, I think everyone is good.
Okey-dokey.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a question right now, feel free to unmute and ask us. But otherwise, thanks so much for coming to Feature Friday, and I hope this was helpful and enlightening for you all.